Ladies and gentlemen, patriot, truth seekers, digital warriors, welcome back to the show again. This is the Baraka Show. If you're joining us right now, make sure you share this live feed. Make sure you share this broadcast. And today I'm not joined by just a regular guy. No, this guy has been in the street, just having a conversation before doing this, and he's out there exciting. He's out there ready to take in the censorship machine, this digital ID that's trying to bring on. Is out there ready to take in the Goliath, the big parties. Not just this big party like Labour and Conservative. He's out there trying to take off the other party as well called Reform UK. So, hey, I'm not joined by a regular guy just out there who just has an opinion to share. No, this guy wants to disrupt the market, the political climate. And it's important for me to bring him on. I did say to you yesterday to you guys, I was like, hey, guys, I'm going to go back to my normal self where I put more time into stories. I'll put more time into guests. And today, that begins. And my guest is the only, one and only, Richard Tyler. How you doing, sir? How you doing? You all right?
Baraka, I'm absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for the invite to come on your show. And may I say, you're doing a fantastic job in getting very important messages out there to the public. As we've seen, mainstream media don't always get the message out there, and it's normally biased, but you have been amazing. So to all of your viewers and followers, support Baraka. He is doing a great work in championing freedom of speech, which is very important. And, you know, we are the media now, Baraka. I'm sure you'd agree with that. And it's
That's right.
So excited to be on your show, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, we got a long list of people that I wanted to have on the show. I wake up in the morning and I tell the team, hey, what's that list look like? We got like a big spreadsheet, and we got pop, and I was like, okay, I want that guy first. So they reached out to you, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take over the conversation. So we started talking, and we hit today. But there's a lot of things to unpack here today. First of all, I got the newspaper today. You know, I always buy this. A lot of viewers are telling me, hey, Barack, you're wasting a lot of money on this newspaper because they're telling you crap. Yes, I understand, but it's important to hear what these guys are telling the other people who are sitting at home tuning into them. So we know where we need to go and untangle. Because it's really hard to unlearn what you've been taught. It's really hard than to learn something new. So I read this, I understand what these people are learning, so then I can come with a different approach so I know what to tackle and what to address. Now, the story today, the last couple of days, is the horrific and terrible attack that we've seen in Manchester. I want to cover that heavily. And I want to sit and stand on the top of my lung and shout, hey, we want to condemn it. But I also want to cover the side of people who are also condemning this, acting like they are on the same side as us, acting like they don't want violence, but they are also going out there on the stage calling for violence. And most of these guys are not just regular guys. Some of these guys are home secretary. Some of these guys are like now foreign ministers, and all these guys are championing pro-Palestinian this, and they embolden this behavior where these guys like jihad, like, I mean, what kind of name is that? I mean, okay, how's a guy being named jihad? But they embolden individuals like him to go out there and attack. So I want to condemn those guys, which we're going to cover. But before I get into that, I want to set a stage for you. I want to make it nice so you can take off nicely. The viewers want to know who you are. I want to know who you are. Could you go maybe when you were a teenager? I mean, you spoke to me earlier on and you said you're so healthy that you feel like you're 20. Man, maybe we can go when you're 5 if you can remember that far. So could you just tell us like who you are, what school you went to, and the things that you've done? And, you know, we've Reformed UK, you're breaking up with them, and now you're with Ben Habib. I want to go through, I want to know that whole journey, and then so we can tackle this, knowing who we're talking to today. Richard, could you do that for us, please? Thank you.
Baraka, yes, of course. Thank you ever so much for allowing me the time to be on your show tonight. I think firstly, for your viewers, just to know a little bit about me as you've requested. I'm a Welshman, as you can probably tell by my accent, from the Welsh Shires, as it was, from a place called Llanelli. I grew up in a very poor family, working class family, on an estate called the Bryn, which means hill in Welsh, by the way. And I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 10 years of age. I had three younger brothers. And we grew up I was born in the 70s and during the Thatcher era. And we were very, very poor. I remember many Christmases where I'd come down and there'd be no Christmas presents under the tree. My mother would be crying. And then we would have a tin of Irish stew for Christmas dinner, literally between the family. My dad had left the home, so my mother and father divorced. And I ended up in foster care at a young age. So I went through the system, very broken, felt a lot of rejection, felt as if my life didn't count for anything. And subsequently, when I grew older into my teens, I began to hang about and try to find my identity in a gang. And I got involved with a group called the Town Boys here in Llanelli and started taking drugs and smoking cannabis, the usual kind of recreational drugs, and did a lot of things that to this day I completely regret. But it was the only life that I knew. And I was brought up in that, ended up in Young Offenders Institute for my crimes, which I've put my hands up. It's one of those things you carry with you all your life. But I'm 50 now. This is when I was 16. Not committed a crime since, by the way. But yeah, so I ended up in there. And, whilst I was in a Young Offenders Institute, I picked up a Bible. And I started reading it, and it had a massive impact on my life. It made me realize, and then I had that there was more to life. Then I had an Anglican vicar come into my cell to talk to me and to tell me that God had a plan for my life. I thought this guy was nuts. I thought he was crazy. I thought, how can, if there's a God, first of all, and if there is, how is he got a plan for my life? I mean, I'm a nutcase. I'm crazy. I'm mental. All those kinds of things. And to cut the long story short, I know we want to get to other things. Yeah, I became a committed Christian. Had a massive impact on my life and completely changed me. It wasn't a religious experience. It was a spiritual experience that radically changed my life. And I think that for me, coming from a background of addiction, a background of poverty, a background of not having much and having to struggle through life. My younger brother, unfortunately, Robert, I'll mention his name, he died of a heroin overdose when he was 35. And that kind of broke my heart. Still does to this day, actually, thinking about him. It was last month, actually, it was anniversary of his passing. And it kind of drove me to want to do something good with my life. So when I became a Christian, I went into drug rehabilitation. I established several rehabs across Wales, and we had a very, very high success rate of 76% of people who turned their lives around. And you didn't have to be a Christian to change your life, but the basis upon which we built the rehabs was around those Christian values. And I think I saw so many young men and women's lives changed. It was the greatest times of my life, because they went on then to get married, get jobs, and contribute to society in an amazing way. And little old Richie from the Welsh Shires played a part in it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. What an opportunity to turn your tragedy into a testimony and then use it to help other people.
That's amazing.
It's just been amazing. So that's a little brief kind of snapshot, if you like, of where I come from. So yeah, I am a Christian. I believe in Christian values. They're very important to me, and they're the things that drive me, that motivate me, that make me see the world. My worldview is very much around those principles. I think seeing others change and see their lives change, there's nothing more exciting than that, and giving them hope on the future as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack there. So you grew up in a poor, middle class, maybe not middle, super broke.
Working class.
Working class.
Yeah,
your mom at some time during Christmas, she didn't have what a lot of moms had to prepare for the kids, like Christmas tree boxes under the tree, and you seen her crying. Your dad was not able to take responsibility. He ran away. So you seen all that at a young age, and then you got into drugs, thinking that might fix, and maybe that might make you disappear from the reality and create a fake perception. Obviously, that failed. And then you got into jail, and somehow an angel visited you at the time where you're broke, done, cast out to the pigs, I might say. And you got reborn again. And not only that, you were reborn again, you went and make sure that others are awake. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. That's a good story. That's like a Batman story, you know. So
no, but something interesting you said there is what you said there, Baraka. Is when I said I'm done, I felt God say to me, "Good. Now that you're done, I can begin." It was like, right, okay. You know, that's where things change, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now all that's done. So you can tell you had a rough upbringing. So tell me, how did you get into politics, and how did you become the guy who a lot of people now are championing, that you'll be the guy to save Wales? Tell me, how did we get here? Your politics. Give me the stuff. Maybe take me back when you're like in your 40s, 30s, leading up to this.
Well, firstly, if I can say, I was never ever interested in politics at all. It had no interest whatsoever. I was one of those kind of people that some of your viewers might be able to identify with this. I'd watch Question Time on a Thursday night and watch the politicians on the thing and debate, and I'd be shouting at the TV screen, you know, "Oh no, he's wrong, he's right," you know, and then I looked at it and thought, Richard, it's all very well shouting at the TV screen or reading the newspapers and watching BBC, as I call it, the British bashing corporation, or sly news, as I like to call it, and, you know, shouting at the TV. Why don't you do something about it? And at that time, I'd always been brought up to vote Labour because, of course, you're in Wales. We've always been taught that Margaret Thatcher was the Antichrist, that she shut down all the coal mines and took milk out of primary schools. And so Labour was the party of the people. And so by default, everyone in Wales voted Labour. That's why we've had here in Wales, we have devolution. We've had 2 decades of Welsh Labour. I started to look into politics, and I realised that they were in control of a lot of things that determined the direction of our lives. Whilst I was involved in church matters, the church had a voice, of course, and a place, you know, with its message of morality and everything else, not superior, but morality. And I saw what politicians were doing, and I didn't feel they had the best interests of the nation in mind.
Right.
And I'm watching this, and what really got me, Baraka, was in 2019 when we had the Brexit vote. When the Brexit, 2016 up to 2019, we had the Brexit vote, if you remember, and 17.4 million people in this country, it was one of the biggest democratic votes in our history, voted for Brexit.
That's right.
And I watched day after day politicians deny people's democratic right and their vote, and they've tried all kinds of measures, all kinds of ways to try to repeal that vote and say we need a second referendum. We don't agree with what's happened because it doesn't fit our narrative. And that really angered me. So I can tell you, Baraka, my first introduction to politics was out of a sense of sincere disbelief that politicians had failed the people that they were supposed to represent when they voted for Brexit. So that's how I got involved in politics.
Yeah. That is because Brexit, a lot of people are saying, well, there's a lot of very much, especially the people on the left, they try to take I think Brexit should be a pivot point where we can all look back and be like, wow, what a democracy that was. That was. I mean, the fact that we had multiple people coming together, parties uniting. You know, we got the conservative and all these people on the right uniting, and people on the left as well uniting to vote to leave or to vote to stay, and everybody was heard. And you know, a lot of people vote leave, and even if you was on the side to stay, you should at least celebrate the fact that that was the biggest ever democratic values being shown in the modern history. But it seemed like a lot of people were not happy for that.
Yeah.
They were like, oh man, they're waking up. We don't want them thinking that they can always vote no. We don't want them thinking that they can always get away with things and make us look bad and make us not get our way. So I'm assuming those guys were probably angry and still angry till this day that we see. So that was a wake-up call.
Yeah, I think, Baraka, we have to look back, though, to this, because what we had here during Brexit, many people talked about it was Brexit in name only. And I'm still of that opinion because, of course, the champion of Brexit was Mr. Nigel Farage.
That's right.
And he had been, for 2 decades an MEP in the European Parliament, and he was determined to get the UK out of the EU and become an independent sovereign nation. Now, if you look at it from the optics, he did what he said he was going to do in the sense of the vote. However, this is where people sadly have been deceived, because what we felt was Brexit was not delivered, either under Boris Johnson, the pressure from Nigel Farage, because we are still tied in to international powers and institutions outside of our own parliament, even including things like the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, which has powers and jurisdiction within our domestic politics. Now, when I voted for Brexit, I did not vote to be tied into that. I did not vote to be part of the WEF, the WHO, or the UN, or all of these tentacles that are involved in our domestic politics, shaping policy, shaping the ideas of our current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. I voted to leave all of that. And I think what happened once Brexit was done, Mr. Nigel Farage left politics altogether because he had felt that he had accomplished everything. But actually, he didn't. And that was one of the things that really, really struck me hard. And a lot of people who voted for Brexit were like, we've been let down here. We voted for something that we did not get. Now, I understand that we've left the European Union in part, but there are still red tape, unelected bureaucrats in Brussels dictating how we, as a sovereign nation, should, discharge our duties as a United Kingdom. And I don't believe what Farage delivered was Brexit. Neither Boris as well, by the way. And of course, David Cameron put that into motion, the Brexit vote, as you know.
Right.
And I think it's very disappointing to a lot of people because we're still, let me tell you this, Baraka, we're still suffering now because we did not get Brexit done. We are still suffering. We have an open borders policy that we would not have had we repealed the ECHR, come out of that altogether. I mean, even the Supreme Court that we have in our country, the highest court in the land, it's full of left-wing leaning judges. And the place of lawmaking should be Parliament and sovereign. It shouldn't be in the hands of these left-wing judges that can overrule Parliament to decide whether or not, this is right, that is wrong. We saw it with the Rwanda plan with the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people felt very disappointed in Nigel. And I was a great fan of Nigel. I had a lot of respect for him. He's very charismatic. He's very good. He's a great orator, a great speaker. And I had the privilege of sharing platforms with him on numerous occasions. But I watched him change, and he almost became to me like a political chameleon. And I was really worried. And I thought, Nigel, what are you doing? And I've watched what's happened in more recent years with the way that they've treated people like our leader at Advance UK, Ben Habib, who's the deputy leader when Nigel left, and increased the membership, by the way, when he was deputy leader, and also more recently, Rupert Lowe, who actually, you know what, Reform tried to say that he had dementia and they wanted to take him to court. I mean, this is just, politics can be dirty, right? It really can. But what I have found is, Baraka, is I resigned my membership of Reform for a number of reasons, but the first reason was their constitution. Their constitution is undemocratic. That's the first thing. Secondly, Nigel Farage owns most of the shares within the party. So you can't get rid of him. And then you had Zia Youssef become the chairman, not by any election, not by the members voting for him, but because he paid over £200,000 donation to the party. And then he was appointed, which he is now head of policy, by the way, as the chairman. Now, to me, that stinks. That's not democratic at all. And so the red flag started to rise, and I thought, there's something up here. Something's not right.
Yeah, I noticed because I just shown a picture of you and Nigel Farage. You guys look like buddies. I have to say, see, you guys look good. You made a post in last year praising Nigel Farage, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna vote reform," and I believe you probably did. So you guys had all these lovely stuff going. Then after July 5th last year, everything changed. Almost every single person who called for everybody to vote reform, somehow everybody changed. We seen the booting out of Ben Habib, you just mentioned. We had him on a show not long ago. Really cool guy. That fight began, and we see Nigel Farage calling everybody. Going back on his promises, that was a big one. A lot of people noticed that, and they start saying, "Hey, this is not it. This is not it." And then we seen the fight with Rupert Lowe. Oh, that was brutal. People were like, "All right, maybe Nigel's losing it," but then we seen them trying to put him in jail, trying to get him criminalized. I was like, okay, that's not fair. Then we see the Tommy Robinson, the way they handle it, just attacking the guy who cannot defend himself because he was in jail, he was in prison. That was not good. We've seen all these things, and then one might stand here and say, all right, makes sense. It makes sense for everybody to attack Nigel and attack Reform UK. It makes sense because we've seen so many. But then somebody might sit on the other side and be like, hey, these guys have gone so big and you guys have helped them to get this big. Don't you think it would be stupid for you to leave it and go and start something new completely from scratch? So that's the people. And I see people in the chat right now saying, hey, Nigel, reform is the only way. And some people are like, no, Nigel Farage is not the way. Some guy just said, just justify. Janice just said, I do not trust Nigel Farage. So there's these two things that we have to juggle with. And I want you to explain to me, since we're talking about politics now, which is the fun part now, I want you to explain to me why Advance UK now. I mean, why not stick and help Nigel Farage maybe to at least understand him, or maybe get him to understand you, or maybe find a winning common ground? I mean, why are we suddenly just doing something from scratch, completely new? Tell me more about that.
Absolutely, Baraka. Before I do that, I need to plug my laptop in because my battery's about to die. So just give me 1 second. So maybe you can put something on the screen there while I put my plugins. I need.
I got a lot of things to put on the screen. Don't worry about that. I always have stuff to put on the screen. To every single one of you who has walked this road with us, not just the easy win, but the tough, heavy storm, I want to reach out my hand to you, sir, and say thank you so much. Thank you so much, missus, because you didn't just fund a platform. You didn't just support creator. You stood for something sacred. That was a quick break, guys. We're back now.
Yeah, I think, thank you to all the viewers who've asked those questions. And it's a poignant question because a lot of people might say to you and others as well, why a brand new party? Why, because Reform are doing really well and high in the polls. And of course, I think many of us would agree that Labour have been an absolute disaster for the country. Abject failure. They failed on every scale. If you look at their manifesto pledges and promises, they've reneged on so many of those. And we look at the state of our economy. We look at the state of our country, really. And you look across the board at every tier in society, Labour have categorically failed this country. And I think those who voted back in July are holding their heads in their hands. In fact, I was in a Wetherspoons earlier having some food, and I was listening to people talking about digital ID, actually.
Right.
Which I support.
Which we're going to get to as well.
Yeah, just behind there for Together Declaration with Alan Miller and the guys. But one of that, we'll probably come to that. But one of the things was, I was listening to this people talk across the other side of when I was having my food, and they were talking about this because pubs, and restaurants are the people's parliament, and I was listening to them, and they were like, "I voted for Labour, and I can't believe what I voted for. I cannot believe what Keir Starmer's doing." And I think what we've had is we've only had one alternative to the uni parties. That's the Conservative and Labour. Reform has been the only party. And let's not forget and remind ourselves, they are like 5, 6, 7 years old, okay? And so there wasn't a real appetite in the nation for another political party because people thought, well, Reform, Farage is the Messiah. He's the savior. He's going to save the nation, because he's got all the right policies and everything else. And as I've alluded to at the beginning of our show tonight, some of the things that caused me to have red flags, I was just disengaged at this point with politics. I pulled away from it. So I resigned from Reform because of the constitutional changes, because of the trajectory of the party. And then Ben Habib, come on, I just seen him online. And I interviewed him back in 2016 on my own podcast. And the very same things he was saying then, he still says now. So he's been really, really consistent. And he was speaking about starting a new party. And I thought, why would Ben be crazy enough, given the fact that he has spent so much of his time in politics and he's a very successful businessman? Why would he want to get back involved in politics? And the only reason I could think of was the simple reason he cared about his country, which is rare in politics. He genuinely cared about his country. He wasn't in it for the money. He wasn't in it for his ego. He wasn't in it for title. He was simply believing that the United Kingdom was going in a direction that was very frightening, very dangerous, and he wanted to save the United Kingdom. And I watched him. Then he phoned me. He called me. He said, "Richard," he said, "listen now, you're my man in Wales." I was like, right, okay, here we go. What do you mean? Because I was finished with politics altogether. I was ready to drive off into the sunset and, travel and enjoy my life and lie on beaches and, drink coconut milk and whatever. Just enjoy my life.
That's right.
However, when he spoke to me, something hit me right in here and I felt it. I'd listened to some of his interviews and I thought, you know what? We are facing existential threats to our country right now. Really, we really are. The dangers are far worse than people think they are.
Yeah.
Because we only get told what mainstream media tell us, which is not the full truth. But if you knew the full truth, it's frightening. And I don't want to scare people, but it is frightening where we're going, where we're headed. Mm-hmm. And when I spoke with Ben, I said, "Ben, give me 2 days. I'll come back to you. I need to think about this and pray about it." So I did. I spoke to my best friend about it and said to her, I said, "Listen, I've been asked to get back involved into politics. What do you think?" And she said the same. She said, "We'll pray about it." And we did. And she just said, "Richard, I feel it's right. You've got a voice. You need to get back in because the state of our country right now, it needs strong, passionate voices to fight for democracy, for the freedom of speech, and equality under the law, and of course a nation state when we talk about Great Britain and Northern Ireland being part of the union because of the divisions that we've seen." And so I phoned Ben back up. I said, "Ben," begrudgingly, I said, it wasn't begrudging actually, it was with a sense of nervousness because the responsibility of being called a leader, first of all, comes with it with a huge amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
People love to grab titles and want to have their names lit up in lights and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at what it means to be a leader, it's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. A lot of people have expectations of you. They put their faith and trust in you. And I do not for one moment at all take that for granted. I take it very, very seriously. And so when I said yes to Ben, I became part of the college and then heading up the Welsh arm, if you like, because we are a union. It's not just Wales. We got Northern Ireland and Scotland and good old England. Don't like to say too much because we don't like them in the rugby, but you know what I mean? Yeah. So I really felt it was something that was passion. The passion was there. And if you looked at the 4 mission statements that Ben set out, they really, really gripped me. And I thought, this is what's going to win our nation back. We don't need politicians with nice, fancy slogans, political footballing and saying, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we'll change this. You remember, stop the boats, save the NHS, we'll do that. What did they do? Nothing.
Yeah.
They increased our national debt to trillions of pound interest every single month. They've depleted our armed forces. They've ruined the NHS. Our public services are on their knees. And they would rather give praise to virtue signaling to minority groups that exist, give priority to them, which is not equality at all, because they don't want to offend them because of political correctness. And I thought, right then, now I'm going to fight. This Welshman, this Welsh dragon is saying enough is enough, because I'm not fighting for myself, Baraka. I believe that my team and I, we're fighting for our children and our children's children. Because look, we've had our time. Well, I want to leave a legacy that creates a country that is safe, that is secure, that is prosperous. Because we believe in an independent, prosperous United Kingdom in all of its parts, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and we believe in serious principled politics, not what we see currently right now. So Advance UK was launched by Ben Habib. He set a benchmark of 30,000 members to see if there was an appetite out there, because Reform was the only party out there, remember? And people say, oh, you're splitting the vote. No, that's nonsense. Reform was splitting our vote. Okay? Because we're the fastest growing party, by the way. I remind you, 5 months ago, we were at zero. We're over 35,000. You know, it took Reform, 5 years to get to that many? So we are absolutely committed, dedicated, as you can tell by my voice, my passion.
I can see how passionate you are, boss. I understand.